leaders, welcome into the Leadership Sandbox. I am super stoked that today we are celebrating 2 years in the Sandbox with our podcast here, and so excited that we have 104 episodes. This is episode 104. This is officially our second year anniversary for the podcast, and we are so grateful for all of the listeners and the audience that follows us and checks in with me on the regular to let me know how our episodes are impacting them. And there's more to come on that actually in the coming weeks. I've got some fun testimonies to share with you. But today, leaders, I want to talk all about your communication, your emotional regulation, and the chaos that you being dysregulated in the workplace might be bringing into your team, into your employees. If your communication sounds like chaos, it's more often than not because your nervous system is leading that meeting or that conversation. You're not leading it from the core of your leadership and who you are. We've all been in those rooms and in those meetings where you have that Dorothy the Destroyer personality that comes in, right? And they're really just forceful with their communication, and they're sharp, and they have that critical tone to them. And then they're wondering why no one ever speaks up in the meeting. Well, the reason for that is because if you can't regulate yourself and your emotions, you certainly can't motivate a team to speak up. And no, friend, deep sighs between sentences, that does not count as emotional intelligence. What it actually prompts is people to be irritated and annoyed with you because you're coming in destructive, bringing chaos because you're so emotionally chaotic. Let me share this story with you. I worked with a leader once for many years who was like this, and we'd be fine and the meeting would be going well. The team would be getting along and through the project, the task list, whatever it was that we were working on. And all of a sudden, this leader, when he just hit this certain wall of energy and certain wall of frustration, he lost it. Like he just kept it together in this tight little box for just so long until he puked all over everybody, literally with word vomit, and wouldn't let people get a word in edgewise, and told them how he was smarter than everybody in the room. And the only reason they were there is because he had to keep them there. But if he had a choice, he'd do all the work himself. Well, imagine, if you will, how many people felt like they should just walk out the door because he really didn't want them there anyways. And they were tired of his emotional abuse because of his dysregulation in the way that he communicated when he was frustrated. Instead of just having a conversation with people, instead of just saying, hey, you know what? I'm frustrated right now and I need to take time out because if I don't, then this is what's going to happen. He was not emotionally aware enough to do that. And in his dysregulation, chaos ensued. People shut down, which is a form of chaos. People stopped talking, stopped asking questions. And in this episode today, in episode 104, what we're really getting into is what I call the calm cascade. And it's how your internal regulation sets the thermostat for the entire team. So when your temperature is at the right temperature for you and everyone without you word vomiting all over the room in your frustration, you've now set a healthy thermostat for the entire team. See, regulation is leadership. Emotional regulation is not some soft skill. It's a strategy. It's a tool to use. If you walk into a room hot, your team is going to burn out and they're going to flame out and they're going to tune out to everything it is that you're saying. So what you think you might be trying to get across in your emotion is actually working against you. The best communicators are not the loudest. They're actually the calmest in the room. Your energy sets the temperature in the room. You know, I remember when I was a little kid at my grandparents' house, I would go in. I'd so excited to get up in the morning. Like it was a really fun thing. We'd always, like my sister and I, it was like, who was going to get up first to go out and beat grandma to the thermostat so we could turn up the thermostat in the house. Because of course you turned it down at night because and grandma would always say, you always sleep better in the cooler temperatures. And if it was really frigid cold outside, that just meant put on extra blankets. But it also meant that my grandma was really good at budgeting her resources. Think about it that way. So my sister and I would get up in the morning, we'd run to see who could, because you want to be the one to turn the dial on the thermostat. Listen, your team wants you to turn your thermostat to the regulation point that's comfortable for the whole room, not that's frigid cold or burning hot. And nobody knows how to show up in that environment. So here's one of the things that I want you to do as a quick, just as a quick takeaway right out of the gate. Before any meeting where you feel your temperature is running hot, I want you to take 90 seconds and I want you to do box breathing. I just want you to breathe in, breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, breathe out for 4 seconds, hold that for 4 seconds. Repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat for 90 seconds to reset your internal thermostat. And then show up at that temperature, at that climate that you want the team to operate in. Because if you come in flaming hot and your team meets you there, you actually aren't going to be more productive getting things done. It's going to have the reverse effect. Here's point number 2 for today. Chaos short circuits all communication, not just your communication, all communication. When you're dysregulated, your prefrontal cortex, right? That rational part of your brain takes the back seat. It takes a vacation. It does not come to play, right? It's that amygdala hijack we've talked about, and it's the fear center in your thinking. And that's when you'll notice it's been hijacked when leaders blurt things out, when they react, they get defensive, right? And then they often come back regretting it later, except for Dorothy the Destroyer. She doesn't regret it later because she never thinks that she's wrong. So your Johnny the Sand Thrower, he actually will blurt things out. He's going to throw things to distract and get you off because he's irritated, annoyed, and he doesn't know how to communicate any other way right now. But he will come back later and regret it. How you as the leader set the tone, though, so that we lessen that impact and ideally change those behaviors is really about having your own brain dialed in, because a dysregulated brain cannot do diplomacy. It can only do damage control. So make sure you're regulated so that you can help others get into there. Because listen, I want to be clear on this. Email is not going to change it, right? Here's what will. Taking time to take a pause, to take time out, to ask the next best question, to come back and regroup later. If it's you that had your freak out moment and you pulled a Dorothy the Destroyer, separate, go for a walk, do the breathing exercise, write down what it is that you reacted to in that moment and come back and speak the truth to that. Don't try to say, well, if you guys didn't, or you always, or I felt. No. I want it to be about, I recognize what I did was wrong. And here's what I see that how it might've impacted us. And here's what I'm doing different the next time. What more do you need from me to be different? That's a way for you to correct it quickly. You also can turn that into a coaching conversation. If you have that Johnny, the sand thrower on your team, that's actually dysregulated and throwing sand and throwing a temper tantrum, and you want to bring him in one-on-one. That's how you do that. Point number 3, regulated leaders create psychological safety, meaning your people are going to mirror your tone faster than your words. And when they feel calm around themselves and they see calm in you, they think more clearly, they collaborate, they're more truthful with one another because you're creating that safe, comfortable environment for them to be that. Now, I'm not saying that we're all going to sit around like roasting marshmallows, singing Kumbaya. That's not the point. The point here is that to create that environment where people can be truth tellers, it requires you to know you and what might be triggering you and set the tone for that. Because when your team feels tension, they're going to go into self-protection mode, not innovation. And when people show up in self-protection mode, they're not being creative. They're actually coming in to be combative. So when you're setting that tone for people, just know what you're going to get back is combative. And I know that's not what you want. But listen, here's the truth bomb of this. You don't earn trust by talking calm. You earn it by being calm. So many times, and I'll go back to that leader I talked about just a few moments ago who would come in and everything would be going fine. And then all of a sudden, like a light switch went off and he was all over the place and you couldn't track what he was saying. He was so chaotic and dysregulated because he was so frustrated. Nobody was calm in that moment. Everyone, I should say, was feeling tension in that moment. But when you can stay composed, right, in those tense situations, as the leader, it can shift the energy in the room. And you actually can have an impact as a bystander in that moment. We'll talk about that more detail in a future episode, but there is a way for you to push pause and ask if we can take a time out and come back to this conversation in 10 minutes. Now, some people, like this one guy I'm talking about, this former CEO, he would erupt and, no, we're not coming back. I'll tell you when we're coming back. And my answer always was this: okay, well, then I will not participate. I will just sit silently and I'm going to go off camera while I'm at it because I don't need to be treated this way, but thank you. And that's what I did. So you could take a page out of Tammy's book and try that. Because listen, if you can't regulate, you can't communicate. And if you can't communicate, you can't lead. You're not leading. It doesn't happen. Remember pushing pause, taking a breath, asking the next best question. That is the way you regulate your brain. It's the way you regulate your heart rate. It's the way you change the temperature and you show people that you're listening and that you really do want to know. So leaders, regulation isn't optional. It's actually your lifeline to success. The way that you regulate yourself sets the emotional tone. So if you don't like the tone in the room, go back to you and see, are you coming in chaos and Dorothy the Destroyer? Are you coming in calm, clear-headed? Even in frustration, you're able to speak through the frustration. And there's a way to do that that's respectful, because chaos is no place that people want to build in. It's where they want to escape from. Listen, if you're tired of leading from reaction and ready to communicate with calm and clarity and courage, I want you to tune in every week here at the Leadership Sandbox, because I've got more tips and strategies just like this to lead through the chaos, to bring calm, to remember to be like my grandma Vance. You want to be the thermostat. You want to set that thermostat every morning. Get up. Where's my thermostat? Do I need to raise the heat a little bit to get moving? Yes, I do. Ooh, do I need to turn it down a little bit? Yeah, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to do some box breathing and I'm going to self-regulate myself so that I get really clear on what I want and need out of this next meeting. Those are super simple. So take a page from my little book with Grandma Vance. Be the first one to set your own thermostat in the morning at the right temperature for you to succeed every day with your team. Because regulation is your responsibility. Communication is your superpower. And when both are used together, you actually are beating the chaos monster in the workplace every time. Hey, thanks for joining me for this second year celebration of the Leadership Sandbox. I'm super honored that you're here. I'm glad that you took time out of your day. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with someone who you think could really benefit. Like, subscribe, and get into our community. Head on over to LinkedIn. I love being active on LinkedIn. DM me there. I had a great testimony this last week that I'm going to share next week in the episode about someone that heard me talk at a conference, and they came up to me a few days after we'd seen them in the community and they said, "Oh my gosh, I have to tell you this. Here is what you changed for me and here's what happened." And I cannot wait to share that message with you next week. I'm hoping she's going to join me, but we'll see. If not, I'm still going to share the testimony because it's super cool about easy action items to implement here in the Sandbox. Every week, Leadership Sandbox. Thanks for taking time to grow today. I don't take that lightly. I know that time is valuable and precious, and I am honoring and celebrating you for taking time today to grow to your next level of leadership. We'll see you next week in the Sandbox. Make it a great day.